Hey y'all, so today we're going to make Dunkin Hines keto mix and we're going to turn it up a notch, alright? So what I'm going to get is, I'm going to get my Lily's less sugar chocolate chips. So this is just going to add a little more carbs per 30 chips. So we're going to add this to it as well. And then we're also going to add some maple flavored walnuts and pecans. So what we need to do first is we need to take our keto mix, get the package out, ready to rock and roll. So this recipe on the back calls for 6 tablespoons of softened butter with 1 tablespoon of water. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to exclude the water completely, but I'm going to add about, 1/3 of a cup of these Lily's chocolate chips, semi-sweet baking chips. They have literally 0 sugar in them, but it does use 3 grams of erythritol. So, beyond that, we're going to add that to the mix. I'm going to take my pecans and walnuts here, and I want to break them up just a bit, because if I don't, they are too big for the cookies, and it'll just be an uneven cook, So I take my nuts, just break them up a little bit, not a ton. You're not trying to make them, ground per se. And I'm going to add all of this nut mix here, which is about, I would say, a cup and a half, somewhere in that department. And it's really going to kick up these cookies for us. So again, just break them up piece by piece, just a little bit. Once we get them all broken up and ready to rock and roll, then I'm going to add my mix. Now, another key to this is it asks for the 6 tablespoons of butter to be softened, but we're not going to let them soften in a microwave. We want to let them soften at room temperature. The butter then has a better consistency, and when you add it to the mix, it's not going to melt the chocolate chips, which in turn would just make them chocolate cookies at that point. So after adding all of our pecans and walnuts here, again, I'm using maple flavored keto pecans and walnuts. We can find them at our local grocery store in the by the pound bulk nut area. I haven't yet to see them packaged, but so there's a little bit of dust in here. We're going to add that as well, because that's going to add some flavor. Next, we get our mix, and we're going to add that mix right on top. I'm going to use all of it in there. So again, you get it all mixed together. Now, I tend to like to add the mix with the nuts and chocolate chips and kind of just give it a stir to kind of evenly distribute it. After we do that, we're going to add our butter. Again, I had mentioned earlier that the recipe calls for 6 tablespoons of butter. I use salted. It does add a nice little touch to it. But we want to add the butter as it's softened outside of the fridge for about 5 hours or so. So when we add that, we're going to do a rough estimate on the size of the amount of butter. I know from cooking it in the past that it's going to be about half of this block of and I'm using here the Kerrygold salted butter. So I'm going to add that. And if I'm being honest, realistically, we're going to add about 7 tablespoons. Because it does, again, call for that tablespoon of water. I don't like to add the water. It makes the cookies tough, in my opinion. And that's probably because of the mixing with everything else. So once we got it all together there, I'm just going to slowly start squeezing the butter into the mix. And again, now that I didn't microwave the butter, it's not too hot, so it's not going to melt the chocolate chips. And again, just keep going at it. You want to just keep mixing it a bit. It does get a little messy on your glove, but once all the butter is incorporated into the mix, you'll see it's a nice smooth cookie batter consistency. Just keep going at it until we get it all mixed in thoroughly, all incorporated properly. Also, what I like to do is kind of scrape the sides of the bowl, get the rest of that butter in there, and then every so often I'll actually take it and kind of try to flip the batter as well. Alright, so we're starting to see that cookie dough type consistency in the batter here. We want to try to get all that dry cooking mix incorporated though, because if we don't, then it's just going to be uneven. All right. So that's what it should look like after we get the butter in. We have our walnuts, we have our pecans, and our extra chocolate chips. It does, like I said, add a bit of it more carbs to the mix. It doesn't add any more sugar, and it didn't really have any sugar in it to begin with. In fact, the recipe itself says it has 1 gram or less of sugar. It does use 3 grams of sugar alcohols. If you're not, necessarily an advocate for sugar alcohols, you can always sweeten it with agave syrup or something like that as well. But this doesn't need it because it's already in the mix. And now we're going to portion it out. We want to set our oven to 350. And once we get it all portioned out and on a little sheet tray, then we can bake them. Now, baking is going to be another kind of crucial thing. We're going to want to watch how long these bake for. The recipe itself calls for about 20 minutes. To me, that's a bit long. And again, we want them soft and chewy. We don't want to cook them too much. You do have to be careful though, because of the sugar alcohols in it. It does tend to burn on the bottom a lot quicker, and that is another reason why we're going to pay close attention as we're baking.